This is the Hope Not Note podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by note.
I'm Dr. Dylan Caswell.
And I'm Brandy.
And we're here to bring you out of the note and into hope.
Welcome
back
to
the
the Hope Not Note
Hope Not Note podcast.
Dylan's being a copycat dog. Speaking of dogs, our question has to do with underdogs.
Wow.
Yes.
Nicely done.
Yes, very smooth.
Wow.
Yes, very smooth. Okay, so our question is from Noah, and he asks, why do we cheer for the underdog, but then when the underdog starts to win and create the dynasty, why do we want them to lose?
I feel like Noah's coming after my Chiefs. I feel like that's where
football season, baby.
That's where this question is coming from. And I think it's the classic of...
But maybe he is a Chiefs fan, and he's like, please defend the Chiefs.
Why am I not doing this with the Chiefs Super Bowl ring on from last year? The plastic one that was in a cupcake.
Yes, I remember.
But no, I think we see it with dynasties, with Patriots, with Alabama, with the Yankees, with the Cowboys in the 90s, that we love when the team is an underdog. Everyone gets behind the underdog story because we can all relate to the underdog. And we cheer for it, and they win, and it's exciting, and they keep winning, and all of a sudden we turn on them. I will never turn on the Chiefs. But I get that as the Chiefs have continued to win, a lot of people now root against them. Like, they may not even like the other team. They just want the Chiefs to lose. Because as much as people enjoy watching the rise, they enjoy the fall. And I don't know psychologically why that occurs or why that happens versus just being like, wow, like that person continues to compete and is incredible. Like, I don't know. In the CrossFit community, I don't know many people that were rooting for Frazier to fall or to lose, or Tia Claire Toomey to fall or to lose. Maybe it was happening and we just weren't aware of it, but I don't think it's to the extent of like when the Patriots were winning all the Super Bowls and people wanted to watch them fall, or Bama or things. And it could just be like a bigger scale. But
yeah, the question that came up is the difference between a team versus a person. Like, I've never heard people like cheer for like Serena Williams to lose either.
Right.
And so is it like when it's more of a team versus an individualized person, are we less likely to want failure because like their humanity's there, versus like a team, you forget that it's made up of individual persons, and you're looking at the team as the like the corporation or the title of the team versus like the individual person. Do you think there's a connection there? Maybe.
No, that's a great point. And I think it is there. It's like, when an individual is competing, it's like Serena Williams out on the tennis court, where when the Chiefs are competing, it's like the Chiefs are out on there. And like you said, we forget that there's individuals that make up the team aspect of it. So that's an interesting point. But I think relationally, we relate more to the underdog because we all have our own underdog story. We all have the odds were stacked against us and we rose to the occasion. And so we can relate to that, or it inspires us that like this team that was losing all these years can all of a sudden become this team that was gritty and put in the work, and now they're the best in the world. Like, we can get behind that. But it's interesting because like we see that and it inspires us, but then within a week we're telling ourselves as to why we can't do that, even though it inspired us and we cheered for it. Right. But I think once the team, or I guess we'll just say the team, because not the individual, but when the team keeps winning, all of a sudden we don't relate to that as often. Because I think our perception is that it's less likely for us to keep winning year after year. It's likely for us to earn this thing and then kind of fall, and then earn this thing and then kind of fall, where it's, again, the perception, because I think it is a perception that we have this thought that we can't win and keep winning. So now when a team starts doing that, we almost get annoyed because we're like, I can't relate to that anymore. That's not realistic, although it is happening. Like, we kind of shut down and we're like, we want them to lose because I lose. And if they lose, then I can relate back to them. where the underdog doesn't have that yet.
Yeah.
They don't have the thing to lose. They're out there fighting for it. And it's like one of my favorite quotes is the best swordsman or sword fighter in England is not afraid to take on the second best swordsman in England. They're afraid to take on the farmer with the pitchfork
Mm,
because the farmer with the pitchfork has nothing to lose.
yeah.
They're out there going wild. And we relate to that of the person with the pitchfork trying to make a way,
Mm,
trying to fight all the odds, trying to Rudy,
yeah.
right? Chan Rudy, all these underdog stories that have happened, we relate to them more.
Mhm. I think, oh, so many thoughts, but I wish that more people had a winning mindset.
Mm.
Because if you have a winning or a champion mindset, the actual result of the game or whatever you're trying to achieve, I would say the game doesn't matter as much as like the spirit in which you did it does. And so I think of like as a viewer of sport, like I want the Chiefs to win because I love you and you're a Chiefs fan. So in result, I've become a Chiefs fan. Now, if you were a Steelers fan, I never would have became a Steelers fan. So I'm glad that you picked the Chiefs as a child so that I can
Yeah.
cheer for your team. I would love for the Browns to win. The Browns are the dogs and they are the underdog. And I don't necessarily see them going to the Super Bowl this year. It could happen. Probably not. But the reality is like I love their underdog story. I want them to win. But if they started becoming a dynasty like the Chiefs are, like that's my team already. And
Mhm.
so I'm already like excited. I'm gonna stay excited. But honestly, growing up, like I was the person. Like the Browns lost to Steelers most of my life.
Mhm.
So I did not want the Steelers to win. I always wanted them to fall. I was also surrounded by a lot of Steelers fans, so that like fed into the like, "Oh, I hate the Steelers attitude. But all of that to say, I think that if we take the like team out of it and we look at it as a whole, like having a winning mindset in a daily basis means that we don't have to stay as the underdog. Like we can truly like keep a good attitude. I don't know if any of that's making sense. Do you get what I'm
Yeah, yeah,
saying? I
yeah.
hope the listener is following.
Yeah.
Dylan, can you translate in case they're not?
Well, I'm not sure if I can translate, but I'll add
Okay,
to.
can you add more value, please?
So I think it's the what we frame the reference as the underdog,
Mhm.
right? So this year the Chiefs are going for a three-peat Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened in the Super Bowl era. The Green Bay Packers have 3 championships in a row, but it wasn't the Super Bowl era. Other teams in other sports have won 3 championships in a row, but it hasn't been done in the NFL in the Super Bowl era.
Mhm.
So are they an underdog to win the Super Bowl? No. Are they an underdog to accomplish something that's never been accomplished before? Yeah.
Mm.
So all of a sudden we can take a dynasty and reframe it to go, hey, they're an underdog in this circumstance. And it changes our interaction with the team that's winning like that. There is a Scrabble player who I'm blanking on his name, but he has won the English version of Scrabble for years. And the margin of that he's won by has just been massive, like very little competition. So what he ended up doing is he entered into the French Scrabble competition. He didn't know the language. He took a short period of time, I think it was 4 months or so, to learn the French language. He learned, I think, 440,000 words in French and entered into the French championship. So all of a sudden, this guy that was a dynasty in Scrabble, like, yes, this is a real thing, was it like a dynasty in Scrabble, all of a sudden was now the underdog again. And in that, he won the French championship.
Whoa,
Yeah, with the words
that's
that he
wild.
learned, he was correcting native French speakers' words that they were putting in Scrabble because the conjunctions were incorrect.
Whoa,
Like, he put himself back into an underdog situation to see, can I come out on top again?
that's so cool.
And I think what we forget is that, like, that is what a champion does. And as Brandy mentioned, it's not necessarily about the outcome. It's continuously finding ways to challenge yourself to take on things, to face adversity, to be somewhat successful in it, that it keeps you wanting to come back and learn more and grow more and finding those ways. And these teams that become dynasties, what we forget is that every year that you win and you come back the champion, your season is that much harder.
Mhm.
That makes you an underdog, although you're at the top of the league,
Mhm.
because there's now a target on your back. Every team is now giving you their best because there's probably some grudges held from the season before,
Mhm.
but there's also the like, I could be having a terrible season, but if we beat the world champions, all of a sudden our season, there's a little bit of a highlight that
Mhm.
we can use on it. And so they're playing longer seasons, right? Like they're playing longer than any other team except for the team that they're competing against in the Super Bowl. So now their seasons are longer. They have less recovery time in the off season to the next champion or to when the next season starts. So now they even have more adversity that they have to go through. And then they have to do that again the next year. So we can start looking at these dynasties and realizing that they are underdogs when we shape the perspective and the frame of reference around it. And the dynasties, like they're not UConn's women's team,
Mhm.
like phenomenal, phenomenal dynasty, but eventually it starts to fall. And I think the reason is not because they've gotten worse, but it's because they're getting every single person's best effort every single night that
Mhm.
they play. And after a while, that's a lot.
It's
It's
fatiguing.
fatiguing to take on.
Yeah.
When you're the underdog, like sometimes people aren't giving you the best
Mhm.
because they don't expect you to come out and win. NCAA basketball, 16 over one seeds. We've been seeing that recent.
Yeah.
The 12 over the four seed or the five seeds. Like these upsets happen. And it's because people take the underdog lightly
Mhm.
and the underdog gets to come up and do that. So I almost look at it as like if you're a dynasty and we reframe that perspective to make yourself the underdog because you're getting people's best effort, you have a longer season, you have more adversity. Like to me, that's almost even more
Mhm.
of an underdog.
I love that. I also think of like high school sports, right? Like you have your crosstown rival.
Yeah.
The reality is like if you've created a dynasty, everybody is looking at you as the crosstown rival.
Yeah.
Everybody is playing you as if like you have had a 40-year rivalry history.
Right.
But then if you're the underdog, no one's paying attention to you, which is then cool because that's when you bite as the underdog.
Right.
But like the growing up in high school sports, the crosstown rival, like my school was always the crosstown rival and the underdog because we
Yeah.
weren't as like talented as like the other school. But there were times where like we did beat them. And I think it's because we had the rival spirit where they had like they're like, oh, I'm just going to write you off because you're the underdog spirit. And so it's kind of cool because I think that that trickles into collegiate and professional sports. But I like what you said in regards to like it becomes that much harder because you have a target on your back. And so every single team you're playing against is not taking it lightly against you. Or the reality is like because of that, you can't look at any team as an underdog. You have to look at every team as I need to beat them to like withhold
Yeah.
this dynasty versus like people in the middle, they're like coming to attack you, but then they're looking at other people as like, oh, this will be an easy game. Let me sit my starters. Like
Right.
we see that happening. Like they sit starters or they sit certain players because they anticipate the win already before the game even starts. So like that's not I'm gonna attack this dynasty. That's like you're not even relevant to my team right now. So I'm not even gonna pay attention to you. So it's
Right.
interesting how teams can like ebb and flow
Yeah.
during times, during different seasons, during different decades and things like that. And that's why it's cool to talk about the team versus like the individual player.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because like the underdog, we talked about their grittiness, the sweat, the extra work that they're putting in to reach a level of a championship. But then what happens once they reach that level? If they don't keep doing the things that got them to that point, they go back down, right? Like once you reach one peak, it's the decision of, am I going to keep this effort up and keep repeating the things that have made me successful to get to the next peak? And you get to that peak, and guess what? You have to repeat the grittiness. You have to put more work in to get to the next peak. And so each time that it gets to that level, and we forget that each of those levels, it's a next level up. It's another challenge. It's another adversity. Although there's the accolades and the winning and the championships, like they have to put in an equal amount of work that got them from the underdog to the top dog. And then to stay up there, the work that they have to put in, it's still there. It's like they have the recipe, but just because you have the recipe doesn't mean it's carried out. Like now you have to carry it out while facing more adversity, more eyes on you, more stressors, more things that you have to be able to adapt to.
I loved watching the preseason game, which we now know that like Mahomes did the behind the back throw just to
Right.
mess with Kelsey. But I love seeing that because he slash the Chiefs are a perfect example, in my opinion, of having the framework of what it means to like overcome being the underdog, what it means
Mhm.
to win and be a champion, repeating that can repeat like continuously repeating that through the years. But the reality is it, you're right, it is the framework, but there's an evolution that also has to happen on top of that. It's not just repeating the exact same thing because if you were, the other teams are going to start seeing your patterns.
Yeah.
So I loved watching Mahomes do a behind the back pass because he's continuing to elevate his game so that he's not becoming predictable.
Right.
And I think that that's how you continue to like build a dynasty, right? Like you can have great success and you're building a dynasty, but the way that you keep the dynasty going is like continuing to elevate your ability so that you're not predictable.
Yeah. I think there's always a reference that we can use that like we are the underdog.
Mhm.
Like you set out to reach the desired place on your heart and you reach it. Well, it's like the champion mindset says, well, like what's next? It's giving you that thing to keep aiming for.
Mhm.
So if you don't have an aiming point, you don't necessarily know where you're going, or you're not willing to put in the work and the effort and the disciplines that will get you to
Mhm.
that point. All of these athletes that we've referenced that have accomplished incredible things, they keep elevating the aiming point. They keep
Mhm.
elevating the aiming point to keep themselves in that mindset of taking on challenges and overcoming that challenge.
Mhm.
Because if you just keep winning, but there's not a challenge, athletes get bored. Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
That's why he stopped running for a period of time. He didn't have a challenge anymore.
Mhm.
He was getting bored. And then all of a sudden he started to get a challenger that was calling him out. And he was like, oh, great.
Mhm.
Like I have a challenge again to go after that. That keeps me going
Right.
in this process of becoming the world's fastest man.
Right. I love it. I loved this question. I love being able to talk about teams and sports and elite athletes and all the things. So keep the questions coming. If you have a different question about fitness, leadership, perspective, mindset, health, hope, literally anything, head over to our website. We have a form that you can fill out that you can ask the question there, or even just simply send us a direct message on Facebook or Instagram. We'd love to be able to take it and use it and then allow others to be empowered through these episodes. So please do that. And Dylan, why don't you share a hope story?
Different angle. Instead of providing a hope story, I want to
Okay.
provide a hope story challenge.
Ooh, juicy, juicy.
Because the reality is we have our own underdog stories
Mhm.
that we can share and can continue to share to inspire other people. But the reality is as a listener or a viewer, you have an underdog story. You have something that you want to accomplish, a desire that's been placed on your heart that you want to go achieve. And you look at other underdog stories and they give you this feeling of inspiration and short-term motivation, but then there's not an action that's put towards it. So what I want to provide this week is for you to start writing your hope story by taking that underdog story that's yours and taking that step to get closer to achieve it, where then you get to become the inspiration for other people,
Mhm.
that you get to show them that this is happening. In our Hope Hub, we talked about Cole Hocker and how he shocked the world by winning the 1500 meter in the Olympics. And who believed that he was going to win the gold medal
Mhm.
in that race? None of the critics,
Mhm.
but he believed that he could. He knew that he's the underdog. But he said when the dog has nothing to lose, they can run the best race.
Mhm.
And he went for it. He believed that he could do it.
He's a dog.
He's a dog, and he did it.
Yeah.
He found a way to win that race. It was incredible. Then it went from Hocker shocks the world
Mhm.
with this. He took that and he made it achievable because of the belief that he had in himself. What's keeping you from your underdog story to becoming the top dog and reaching that thing that you have? The belief that you
Yeah.
have in yourself to do these things. How do you start to get that belief? Well, you got to start making the smallest step towards that thing.
Mhm. I don't even wanna share a hope story because I think that is great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we should leave it at that because I love leaving our listeners with something tangible to do,
Yeah.
and I'm with it.
Awesome. Yeah. So start developing your hope story and then share it with us and we'll share it with all the listeners.
Please, please do. We love hearing. You can ask us a question, but if you don't want to ask us a question, but you want to share a hope story like that, that is awesome. We want to know your hope story. So
Absolutely. Have a great week. And remember, every day is not a day to be hopeful. It's an opportunity to become hope.
The Hope Not Know podcast is meant for educational, informational, and personal development purposes only and does not constitute any health or medical advice. If you're looking for specific advice, connect with us to work with a Hope coach. The Hope Not Know podcast shall not be liable or responsible for any loss or damage allegedly arising from any information or suggestions in this podcast.